All right, speaking about, again, leftists wanting to see you die, right? I actually found this, Kirsha's always a good treat. I know, that's actually one of the reasons I started this channel was, to try, this character was to try and, like, help Kirsha, like, whenever she misses something. But now it's just like, nah, I'm just going to do my own thing. But that was actually one of the reasons why, is because I'm a big fan of Kirsha, and I was like, you know, she can't be doing all the work, right? 3 more hours, right? So this one's probably going to be an uber short video, which is this video right here is by Shabuk. Shabuk is son. What the fuck is this? Shabuk is Shab. I don't know how exactly I'm supposed to say this because it's mashed up in a weird way, right? But yeah, this is his video. I'm glad Charlie Kirk is dead, which is an interesting title of a video, especially considering he's definitely gonna like subvert expectation, right? Because this is not the standard video of some ghoulish leftist actually just gleeing at the fact someone they disagreed with died. This actually is something where it's like, again, it's gonna make sense why I wanted to have this on when we go through it. So I'm pretty sure most of the people in chat right now have already seen this video, though. It did kind of make rounds, right? You wanted to be Mrs. Korsha? No, I'm good.
I'm actually glad that Charlie Kirk was murdered, but probably not for the reason you think.
Bit of a strong opening, right? Like, I'm glad this man is dead, but not for the reason you think, right? Wonder, again, it's like, you gotta really, it's gonna be hard to follow that up, right?
I was at work when I first found out. A fellow employee had wandered up to me, cell phone in hand, and asked, "Did you hear that Charlie Kirk just got assassinated?" And I, without even a moment's hesitation, responded, "Good."
So this is actually not too distinct from what happened when I found out about it, right? So when I'm not going to give any details about where it was, because again, you know, basic OPSEC, right? But when I was I was at work at the time, and I was doing some kind of inventory, and one of my coworkers, actually my supervisor, came up, and we had all kinds of like philosophy and politics conversations all the time. Like we got into some decently like actually deep debates, and but yeah, so long story short, right, and I'm pretty sure he's gonna see this, but like, he came up to me and he told me about it, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? And I don't remember, I think yeah, he came up to me and told me about it, and I was like, what? So then I still had minutes on my phone at the time, so I looked it up myself, and I was like, huh, interesting. Like, I was like, okay. I mean, at the time, I didn't really listen to Charlie Kirk in the first place, because it's like not exactly he wasn't doing the kind of thing that I was finding interesting at the time, right? Like, a lot of the stuff he was talking about was really basic stuff, which needed to be said, right? It was needed to be said to the people he was talking to, but I didn't exactly get anything out of it, because he didn't usually say anything that I actually didn't know of already in the first hand, right? Yeah, so it's like, I saw the guy, I saw Charlie Kirk's neck explode, on Twitter the day it happened at work. I was like, okay, that's gnarly, right? I kind of lucked out because I grew up on the time when Live Leak was a thing, so it wasn't exactly unused to, it wasn't exactly shocking and gore wise. It was just like, that's just totally uncalled for, right? It was absolutely beyond the pale, and it was obviously beyond the pale. And it was pretty quick where I found out, again, a lot of people were celebrating that he died. So yeah, I kind of actually have, again, me and him found out about it in generally the same area. It's just, my reaction was more of a moral disgust. I didn't exactly have like a visceral disgust reaction to it, right? I was like, obviously I thought it was horrendously evil. I thought it was like disgusting that it happened, right? It was an evil thing to have happened. But yeah, I do find some of the conspiracy theories about all this being ridiculously distasteful, right? Especially considering it's like, you're gonna accost a widow for what purpose? You better be damn sure that, you're accurate about this if you're really going to make these accusations, because it takes a special class of malevolent douchebaggery to like claim a grieving widow was actually responsible for the death of their spouse. But again, neither here nor there. But let's continue.
Fuck that Nazi white supremacist piece of shit.
Yeah, see, no one in my place had this particular reaction, but again, notice the key terms, right? Let's look at the key terms.
Piece of shit.
So obviously, Nazi and white supremacist here are. You would imagine, first of all, that a Nazi is a type of white supremacist, right? So why exactly are you using Nazi and white supremacist in this way, right? You're just basically repeating yourself here. And the reason why is because this is just a way that they use to emphasize, right? They repeat themselves as a mode of emphasizing a particular like message. And in this case, again, they want to defame his name, so they understand that people outside the exoteric understanding of Nazi is a member of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, and the people who took that ideology and ran with it after the defeat of Germany in World War II. And white supremacists, they understand, is understood from the outside to be, again, someone who believes in the superiority of the white race over other races, right? But they also know that the people in the group don't know that this is not actually what these mean in the group. It just means target for ruination, target for ruination. Emphasized to show this is a high value target for ruination. So it's an emotional intensity and hatred conveyed here. You're not wrong there, right? Hold on, I'm going to try to catch up with chat for a moment. Let's see. Tanu says, okay, I see the vid, seen this one. We'll be listening. We'll be rest. I'm gonna be perfectly honest, Tanu. The key, the typing is a little bit chaotic. Right? Kuro says, I would argue that your particular takes are net positive to the world, let alone Kirsha, just on the metaphysical aspect alone. I hope it is. I try, right? Philip says, Shabuk e sunshine. You were better at disentangling that than I was, right? Cosmic the desensitized. That's not necessarily a good thing, but you're not wrong. Kianala says, devil's advocate side is that most of the time it usually is the wife that offs the hubby, but it was obvious that this wasn't the case. I mean, that's entirely fair. To do the repetition is a common leftist tactic, right? Fair enough. Sorry, my eyesight isn't very good. I mean, that's fair. It's just like I was having a hard time disentangling that one message. It's like I tried. I just couldn't figure out what exactly you were getting at with that. But back to the video, all right?
I had never before witnessed such a perfectly blended expression of disgust, disappointment, sadness, and surprise, all through the window of another man's eyes, or experienced a silence so uncomfortable as the one that followed. And although that look on his face now haunts me more and more with each passing day, at the time, it only made me distrustful and upset. But little...
Yeah, again. So here he's seeing... So he's expecting a particular reaction because in his closeted world, right, that was the him being like, good, fuck that white Nazi, fuck that Nazi white supremacist piece of shit, right? And celebrating his death. To him, in his section of the world, that was actually a perfectly reasonable thing to do. That's what you were expected to do, right? You were trained to react in that way. When your enemy dies, that's actually a boon for you, right? But that's not how a person in the normal world actually reacted. So let's go back to see how specifically they reacted to show how disconnected these people actually are, right?
Surprise. All through
sadness and surprise.
The window of another man's eyes or experience.
And this is where mirror neurons are a godsend, right? Is that we can actually understand each other and how each other are feeling based off of our facial expressions, especially when we know the person, right? This is a coworker. He probably has spent a decent amount of time with him, so he could probably read his face decently accurately.
Silence so uncomfortable as the one that followed, and although that look on his face now haunts me more and more with each passing day, at the time, it only made me distrustful.
Again, it's distrustful. Why? Because he believed he lived up to the expectation, but the coworker did not live up to the expectation, right? The two-way handshake was actually not accepted.
And upset. But little did I know that the sentence which followed would end up becoming the most profoundly psychologically impactful question that I've ever been confronted with. Have you ever actually watched any of his debates?
And there it is. By the way, this is why they refuse to watch the debates or the video content of their enemies half the time, right? Is because a lot of these people, deep down, I think some of these people don't actually believe what they say. Some of them do, right? But some of them know that they don't really know their subject enough to defend it. So in order to keep the faith, they avoid interrogating the faith at all, because a faith that is unprepared is a faith that dies upon any kind of conflict. Let's be perfectly honest, right? So the faith of leftism, for a lot of these people, in order to survive, in order to be safeguarded, has to be safeguarded from true information. Hello, Captain Rudy. So that's why they refuse to interact and read any of this stuff, right? Or watch any of this stuff, is because their worldview literally can't handle it. And they know their worldview can't handle it. So instead of engaging, they just refuse to talk. That's all it is. And again, as I said, they are polylogists anyway. So even if that was the case, they were prepared, still wouldn't matter, because these people don't believe that you can reason the same way they do in the first place, right? So if you have a fundamentally different cognitive architecture than the person you're talking to, you can't bridge that gap between the two. So there's no reason to talk in the first place. Only violence is left. That's why they don't bother with any of this stuff. Because if you do present something actually compelling, it could actually challenge their worldview, which would then destabilize them and make them feel uncomfortable. On the other hand, if it's impossible for them to think the same way as you, then there's no point in engaging you in the first place. So, but yeah. So, did you ever actually watch any of his debates? I watched a couple of them myself, and I'm going to be honest, I wasn't a big fan of the debates, not because they were bad, but it was just because, personally, I didn't get a lot out of the debates, because it wasn't a lot I actually learned in any of the debates, because I actually knew a decent amount at the time when he was doing this stuff, but, you know, he still did way more than I have, right? As banal as I thought some of the stuff he was talking about was, Charlie Kirk was doing a lot more good for society than I've been able to do so far, because he was actually able to reach people, right? It's not just about what you say, it's also about who you're able to actually reach out to and, you know, save from the spell. What's this we're watching? A man realizing that he's a monster.
I decided to end the conversation immediately. This man was clearly a lost cause.
Projection here, right? Obviously, like, this man's clearly a lost cause. What do you mean that I'd have to actually watch something of someone in order to actually understand them, right? I already know. I have the secret knowledge. I have the critical consciousness, right? I have the wisdom. And well, it turns out the wisdom of men can sometimes be the wisdom of fools, right?
One of those intellectually dishonest Kool-Aid drinking types who refuses to engage in good faith with any perspective which contradicts their outstandingly narrow and propagandized worldview. The mirror, the mirror beckons, right? What an astounding example of projection. And by this man, I mean me.
Rare moment of reflection, right? Rare moment of self-awareness. Let's see. Tanu says it is better to be born. Is it better to be born good? That was just me. My eyes just like failed me at that moment. Is it better to be born good or to overcome one's own evil nature through great effort? Well, it depends on what your starting premises are, right?
Because I hadn't actually watched any of his debates. I was basing literally every single thing I believe about a human being with thousands of hours worth of publicly available recordings of himself openly expressing his opinions on a small handful of out-of-context clips that had been curated for me by algorithms and media organizations being funded by the political opposition.
Yeah, he's realizing the idea that the people he had been listening to might have an incentive to misrepresent the man, right? So it might want to actually take some effort to actually go and watch something he wrote or read something he actually wrote to possibly get an understanding of this, right? It's like, again, you can read the works of a communist without being a communist. You can realize communists can't write for shit, but still read what they write, right? Kura says, damn, that's Hassan Piker's level of projection. Yep. It's a lot more common than people think. Philip says, nice description of himself. Yeah, I mean, again, I'll give him props. He's self-aware, which is a lot more than you can say of many of these other NPCs, to be perfectly honest.
I foamed at the mouth, right along with the rest of those rabid and bloodthirsty dogs, gleefully mocking those who had been saddened by his death and downplaying the atrocity of it all by suggesting that political violence is just an unfortunate yet necessary step toward our coveted socialist revolution. That
Again, very, very, very unusually honest, because this man actually did some self-reflection and realized, the fuck is wrong with me, right? But yeah, again, it's like, it's a coveted socialist revolution, utopia. Utopia justifies any ends, right? The question of, are you one of the people who will walk away from Omelas? Well, it turns out if you believe in Marxism, probably not. You are probably one of the people who would stay in Omelas, right? Let's see. Captain Rudy says, Cosmic, don't sell yourself short. It doesn't matter how many people you talk to, but the quality of those interactions. Charlotte Kirk talked to thousands of people. Very few actually changed their viewpoints. No, I'm not downplaying myself. I'm just being realistic, right? He did objectively more good than I have been able to do so far. That's why I qualified it for so far. I do intend to hopefully do more good over time, right? But I also just effectively started this year as well. So, again, the man has done much more than I've done, and he's probably done more than I will ever be able to do. But, you know, it's not a competition, right? It's just do at what you can, right? I'm not in a competition with Charlie Kirk, right? Let's see. You have a decent reach, bigger than you might realize. Well, I hope I do, right? To be perfectly honest. Utopia could justify these nuts. Fair enough. I'll give you that one, right?
it is, until I began to notice a common thread. The exact same comment being repeated ad nauseum in nearly every single online space.
It's almost as if they only have a couple of examples of him misspeaking, and if he had a lot of examples of him being an asshat, they would have had many examples to pull from. But they always go back to the same few things, right? It's almost as if that they kind of only have those few things. Oh, and by the way, just look at his background. The perfect juxtaposition is like fucking absolutely hilarious, right? You got the SpongeBob fucking liquid containers in the background. You got plushies. You have the fucking like Book of Monuments. You got a beanie in the background. And let's be fair, the man does kind of look a little bit soyish, right? But the thing is again, the guy realizes that, you know, he has a very unpleasant realization about himself, right? Again, it's like, just because you have all these interests, just because you seem like a heckin' wholesome fellow, right? Doesn't necessarily mean you actually are a heckin' wholesome fellow.
Have you ever actually watched any of his debates? I didn't think much of it at first. Of course, right-wingers are all regurgitating the exact same talking point. They're in a cult. They're brainwashed.
And here's the thing. So he brings this up. This is the thing I've been talking about, right? Because I mentioned this beforehand multiple times. That the way the Gnostic spell actually works, right, is they have to get you to hate being and love a lie, right? And the way that they do this is actually quite clever. They tell you that the reality of your sense perception is actually a lie, and that there is an idea that is beyond your common sense, that is actually true, right? So the way that they do this is they get you to see being itself as a carceral construct, as a prison, right? And then they give you this beautiful lie that you can use to escape the world of your sense perceptions, right? The world of your common sense, your common wit. And if you can convince someone that the reality is actually a prison, and the hyper reality, i.e. the lie, that which lies beyond reality, is actually freedom, you can convince someone to walk themselves into the cage and lock themselves in the cage. That's the thing. Every time you see someone with these Gnostic ideologies, that's exactly the same thing that they do every single fucking time. they get you to construct, they construct in your mind through the use of rhetoric, sophistry, and con man epistemology a false world, right? They tell you that false world is actually real. It can be yours. All you need to do is step through the door, do the work, do the struggle, right? And you can have it. So that you walk into the cage and lock yourself in there, right? And since, again, the longer you stay in that cage, oftentimes the larger the sunk cost fallacy, right? So, like, it's really funny that, like, again, the Gnostics had this worldview of, like, ah, yes, we're going to liberate ourselves from the confines of this limited being. And it turns out the people preaching that doctrine were the very demiurgic prisoner, again, jailers that they pretended they would free you from. It's kind of interesting, right? So, let's see. Let's see. Boo Huckley says, I wonder how they will react once they get misrepresented themselves. No, they never take it well. Captain Rudy says, a fair enough otaku. Tanu says, they all draw from the same shared dialogue pool. Typical Bethesda tactic. It's how conversations are done in Oblivion. Actually, you know what? I never thought about that. Philip says, the first time I saw the vid, I thought it was Alex Pretty. He kind of looks like him, I'm not gonna lie. Kura says, all evil can be traced back to some form of Gnosticism. Not all of it, but there is a lot of modern ideological evil can be traced back to it. Tanu says, I do not understand Gnosticism, but it sounds wild. I'll probably do a video on Gnosticism at some point in the future. I've explained it a couple times, but I should probably do another explanation of it just for, like, posterity's sake. Captain Rudy says, despite all my rage, I'm still just a rat in a cage, right? That's a good song.
It was an ordinary and boring morning on the day I found out that I am a monster.
Again, as I said, man realizes man has a moment of self-awareness, a moment of, what the fuck is wrong with me? Right? It's like, the hell did I, like, what am I doing? Just, like, in real time. Ken says, I went down a rabbit hole when I looked up who the demiurge was. Then Istalfos, then it was downhill from there. Yep. Skinny Tim Pool. Oh, now I can't unsee it.
In that moment where my curiosity got the best of me and I decided to click on some random YouTube thumbnail of Charlie Kirk with his goofy and gummy smile in an attempt to reaffirm my preconceived biases. And it was an unusually stressful afternoon on that very same day when I spoke to my father for the first time in years, despite the fact that he had always loved and supported me unconditionally.
So again, like, he's realizing that not only did everything he believed was it false, but it actually turns out he's kind of a piece of shit, right? It's like, why? It's like the Caleb Hammer thing, right? That happened not too long ago. That I know, like Leaflet and I think Asmongold both reacted to it, where it's like, why'd you cut off your parents again? Oh wait, they didn't believe the same thing you did, right? So because they don't believe the same thing you did, you're gonna cut off all contact with your parents, right? Even though they presumably loved and cared for you, did the best they could for you, right? And I was like, oh yeah. Like, really telling the kind of person that this is, right? But you can hear the heartbreak and self-disappointment in this man's own voice, right? Like, you could tell that, like, this revelation struck him in the pit of his soul, right?
And it was a never-ending sleepless night, coming to terms with the fact that literally every single thing I thought I hated about the right, the bigotry, stupidity, violence, vitriol, and narrow-mindedness was actually just an outward projection of hatred toward my own self.
Yeah, it's that thing where I keep talking about, like, shadow projection and shadow possession, right? Shadows that part of yourself that you don't like, all the parts of yourself that you don't like. So instead of confronting it, you put it in the back of your mind in the subconscious, right? That way you don't have to look at it. But just because you push it into your subconscious doesn't mean it's not there. It's still there. All those psychological operations are still going. So you know what happens? The only way to deal with it is either bring it to the light and deal with it yourself and actually do the work of becoming a better person, or you could just project all of those flaws onto someone else so you can attack them. And by attacking them, embodying all of the flaws, even magnified or even just invented on that person, right? Then you can attack that dragon without ever actually having to commit to actually slaying the dragon, right? You can project a appearance of virtue. You can signal your virtue without actually having the virtue, right? And in more extreme cases, where again, you just keep pressing it down, you keep pressing it down, you keep pressing it down, the shadow, instead of just being projected, ends up possessing you, right? Because now it's the shadow that controls all of your behavior, because all of your behavior is defined by not being, or by suppressing that thing about yourself you don't like, right? And here we're seeing a man confront a piece of himself that, again, he didn't particularly like, right? He had to step in and through this shadow, and it's not a very pleasant experience. Let's see. Kura says this is actually beautifully romantic in a way, right? Philip says someone give him a beanie stat. God damn it. Yeah, I'm ready. We're so polarized as a society that many can't see reason. Yeah.
Charlie Kirk is my hero. He opened my eyes to the cruel and manipulative nature of our political media, brought my family back together, and taught me how to love again. And to anyone who takes issue or offense with that, I'm going to do exactly what he would have done, and challenge you to answer a simple, honest, and straightforward question. Have you ever actually watched any of his debates? I'm actually glad.
So, yeah, this was probably not a very pleasant video for this man to actually make, to be perfectly honest. This was probably fucking agonizing. But I have immense respect for the man, to be perfectly honest, because again, this took a decent amount of personal courage to, again, put this out there for other people to possibly benefit from, again, just being open, honest, and raw about this, to be perfectly honest, right? Because, again, realizing that you are actually a unironic piece of shit is not a pleasant experience to actually go through, right? To realize that you are actually the very monster that you've been trying to destroy the entire time cannot be pleasant, right? It's, again, so, and that's the thing, is like, that's the first step that this man took to slaying that dragon. That is a dragon he needed to slay, and it does seem as this dragon was slayed. No, the title of the video is not actually clickbait, because, again, if Charlie Kirk didn't die, this would never have been realized. So, in a very real sense, Charlie Kirk dying actually did pull this man out of the cult he was in, right? And that happens more often than people think, right? Sometimes martyrs actually get converts, because it turns out when you're willing to die for what you believe, that actually gives a lot of cred to you, right? And creds is the technical term that I know it sounds really stupid, but creds being the technical term that religious studies uses for, like, the credulity of someone in their beliefs, right? Let's see. Projecting flaws onto a chicken, right? Some are savable. Oh yeah, more people are savable than people want to think. But sometimes saving someone takes a lot of patience, right? The old story about the mother of Saint Augustine, praying for 30 years before she got any kind of actual answer to her prayer, was historically valuable for a reason, right? Philip says proves he has a soul and that he wants to keep it. Yeah, right. Kielnella says, then again, he had a job and co-workers to smack him in the face with reality. I mean, he did, right? He wasn't totally isolated like some of these people are. And here's the thing, that's why a lot of these groups want to isolate you from the outside, right? Is so that there is no, like, again, destabilizing mechanism that could possibly unravel the lie. Charlie Kirk became like Christ. Well, I mean, he is a Christian, is he not? Christianity means literally little Christ, right? That's the whole function of being a Christian. The purpose of being a Christian is to become the image of Christ in the world. So, I mean, that would be the highest of compliments, to be perfectly honest. He's just like Kane from the Amazing Digital Circus. Okay, that was pretty fucking funny. But you're not entirely wrong, right? Kuro says, a man who is a piece of shit and denies it, so no man at all is no man at all. A man who is a piece of shit, admits it, and betters himself is the best of men. I would agree. Captain Rudy says, the first step to solving a problem is admitting the problem exists. I would agree. So yeah, there's my input on, again, I'm glad that Charlie Kirk is dead, which is probably going to be part of the title of this, because that clickbait potential is fucking wild. But, hold on. Let's reward this honesty. So that's the end of this episode. I will catch y'all in the next.